Hello, I want to welcome Elena Medici to the Butterfly Effect, and I just want to thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you being willing to share your story and how you have transformed your life and supported a lot of other people as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Carissa, for having me. And I'm looking forward to sharing whatever it is that I can with your audience because I believe the more we share, the better we get. And the better we get, the better this planet gets.
Yeah, definitely. So I would love for you to start by sharing a little bit about your journey and how you got to be where you're at. And you do help and life coaching, but you also incorporate a lot of spiritual practices, a lot of energy awareness when people are open to it. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about, your journey.
Absolutely. And yes, when I work with women, I'm very specific that I work with women. Once in a while we get a guy, but so it's mostly ladies. And we hone in on women who have hormonal issues, thyroid, autoimmune conditions. So basically things like hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, Graves, Hashimoto's, endometriosis, infertility issues, PCOS. So things like that, because they really start tapping in a lot of women's energy and life purpose. And it just takes them from being vibrant and being in the moment to really struggling day to day.
Yeah.
So, but my life work really started with myself. I God, now it's been almost 14 years or so. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, infertility, and a pituitary tumor all in one appointment after years of struggling. And I decided that I was going to heal myself naturally. And as you know, with our medical system, the doctor immediately says, well, no, it's impossible. Here's the medication. Take it, go home. This is your future. And I was like, you know what? This is not good enough. And so somewhere Rebel and me disagreed because a couple of years prior to that, actually more than a couple of about 5 years prior to that, my husband ended up in a hospital, Carissa. And at that time we're still dating, but he had a brain surgery that he needed because they found a cyst in his brain. And the doctors told him that he would not leave a hospital without a shunt. And I was like, there's no way. We're still in our 20s. And imagine that if there's a shunt, he cannot play sports, especially contact sports. The life would be on the edge. And then he would have to have it replaced every few years, which means continuous surgeries.
Yeah.
So we dug our heels in and I said, no, we're going to heal his body. And the doctor said, absolutely. And they even treated me like a crazy woman at that time. And so what we've done a lot at that point is prayer, meditation, just really getting focused on the outcomes that we want. And to this day, he's shunt free. And the doctor said his surgeon that saved the scar on his head, if he just scanned him right now, he would have never known that there was anything wrong with him. So at that point, it was like, aha, my big aha moment, like this miracles can actually happen on demand.
Yeah.
And so when it was my turn, I said, okay, so let's figure it out. And I knew that the journey was not going to be just like you can meditate it away and imagine it away, which is, I love meditation and I love the things we're going to discuss today. But for me, I needed to fix things like the diet. And then I uncovered that I have a deficiency that needed to be addressed. And ultimately, there was a lot of stress in my life where I was in a relationship where I was betrayed, hurt very deeply. And that took a deep toll on my body. So imagine living in stress for, and your audience probably knows all too well, when if there's any emotional trauma, whether it's psychological, physical, or sexual trauma, people just get stuck in the traumatic experience. So my mind was moving forward, my body was still stuck in the traumatic experiences. So I changed the diet, reverse hypothyroidism, but I still couldn't get pregnant for a few years. And I was like, what's more? What's more? Okay, this and that. So I had to revamp my whole life. And so the program I teach now is called 360-degree impact health, is because I believe that all our health touches the all of what we are in our relationships, in our life, in our spirit life, in our finances and everything. So it really takes the whole person to create a whole person. And for me, the journey was, it was not fun. Yet I used to say, people would say, well, there's a greater purpose. And I said, screw the greater purpose. I just want to be well now.
Yeah.
But when all is said is done, I was able to completely heal myself. I have a 7-year-old, although she acts like she's 17. She tells me often what to do, what mommy needs to do. And I've been working specifically on this kind of issues with women because I see that there's a dire need. I think that we can agree that humanity is really, I think we're in an upswing though, but we've been stuck in this, who is better, stronger, it's a weaker one, is the difference between the men and the female, the rich and the poor, and we get tired of it. So I think that through working on ourselves, we can actually change the social and spiritual climate of our planet. But for me, this was the journey. This what prompted me to say there is more, because I used to be, in my beginning years of health coaching careers, I was like, well, let's change the diet and you should get healthy, and then people wouldn't get all the way healthy, or not all of them. I'm like, well, you're doing something wrong. And then I would look at their stuff and they're doing everything right. They were still sick. So we knew that there's more to health than just a diet, than just a pill, than there's just a medication. And it really takes a whole person, spirit, soul, and body to get well and stay well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, even just sharing like, oh, like, you know, I didn't know everything. I mean, we're constantly learning on this journey, growing. And really, for me, you know, I went through that journey of trying to get healthy physically. You know, I struggled with my weight, and I knew there was just so much more. It was so much deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got on the path of really starting to understand a little bit more about energy and being connected and just the possibilities through healing and this work, that's when things shifted for me. I was like, wow. And I've got connected with so many people who have transformed their life just like you.
Yeah.
Been able to heal and support people. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's
Absolutely.
huge. Is there anything in particular that you've found on your journey, specific structures or healing? There's like healing modalities, but what was your path of discovering this work?
Great question. And I thank you for saying, you know, what kind of tools we're using here, because I don't think there's a one size fits all.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be specific to people sometimes, or their belief system. When I work with women, it can be anywhere from very, very religious, going to church every day or a mosque, to somebody who is an atheist but still wants to be spiritual. We can't use the same tools for everyone. So for me, it was a journey. There was a point when I was a very religious person, and so for me it was the prayer and the Bible and the God, and eventually I became more of a spiritual person, less religious. So it became really energy work at the same time, connecting to the highest form expression of who I was. So now my beliefs have shifted some, and I believe that we are all energy. And it's not that we need to believe it. Science now has finally confirmed what we have known all along, right? They usually swoop in at the last moment, like science now says, but you know, there are practices around the world that have had their hand in spiritual practices throughout the ages. And I think we have been spiritual, we just forgot. But one of my favorite things, I have many. So let me start more with physiological things that we do, and then I can get more into spiritual things that we do. And this what allows, right now I'm at about 95 to 99% success rate with my clients. That means if I work with you, there's that much chance that you're going to get better. But the reason it happens is in addition to the things that we do physiologically, we're going to do a lot of the emotional work. But let's start with the physiological things. So as I mentioned earlier, I went through some emotional trauma. So I was betrayed. It was really hurtful, very deep. And it also happened at the same time when my father passed away, and I couldn't grieve. There was too much grief at the same time. And all of it stuck in my body, and then being diagnosed with infertility. So imagine all of that just kind of compile and push in my body, and it was breaking apart, because we're energy. And I don't know if you ever seen, there's a little image, and we can Google it. It's an emotion spirals. There's one upward, there's one downward. And it's really a great image of the positive emotions. They elevate us to the place of healing and wellness and wealth. And the negative emotions, they really downgrade us. And our vibrational energy becomes more of like low vibration. And this is where the physical body starts to fall apart. Well, I was stuck in that for several years, no matter what I tried. So trauma lodges in the body, and there's a tool that we use. It's called trauma release exercise. It's not my invention. I wish that it was, but it was some smart therapists and medical doctors put it together for people who have trauma stuck in their body, and talk therapy does not work for them, and medication does not work for them. And it's very simple. Again, your audience can go and YouTube it. On YouTube, there are a lot of things that they can look up. There's a few great videos that shows just how to do it. There's science to it. They can read it too. But what it basically does is You exhaust your body by working out, just squats, your lower body, then you lay on the floor in a certain position and your body trembles. And through trembling, you release the stress. Because if we look in the wild, if you ever seen a lioness chase a zebra, the zebra makes it and she didn't die. And 5 minutes later, she's eating. And you think, if that were me, I'd have PTSD for the next 20 years of my life, right?
Yeah.
And you ask the big question, why? But if you look at the zebra, it would stand there and shake herself and then go to graze. And so the stress builds up. She releases the stress and goes to normal. As babies, that's what was done to us. And those of us who have babies, that's what we've done to them. If they're crying, we're kind of rocking them and tapping them at the same time. So the
Uh-huh.
gentle shake can actually releases stress. So if you pick up a crying baby and the baby is crying her head off and you talk to her, she might not come down. But if you involve a little bit of tapping and shaking like this, oh, the baby will be like happy if she's fed, of course.
Yeah.
But that really allows us to start releasing the stress. And then we can start fine tuning and figuring out what do we want emotionally. And emotionally, I found there are many techniques. I can mention a few that, again, not my invention, but I use them as a health coach. What I do, Carissa, is I go and I procure these things from around the world. I'm like, how does
Yeah.
this work? How do we test this out? And then we do either a combination or we do only one thing with a client. So one of my favorite things to do, and it's really the works of the likes of, let's see, Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Lynn McTaggart. Those are amazing energy healers
Yeah.
in that sense that studied energy healing through science. And now we have the proof to already, what, again, we've been doing it as humans for thousands of years. We just now have physiological proof and graphs and all to go with that. But I love to, I call it time travel, quantum leap time travel. I studied physics, that's my background. And what we have seen is that if you create an emotion of the outcome that you want to be in and live in that emotion, then you can negate the harmful effects of the past. So to put it in layman's terms, if you're constantly stressed because of trauma and stress that happened in your body, even though I'm here present, my body is still in the past. I did an exercise this week with my clients and I asked them, what was the worst thing that ever happened to you? And so your listeners can do that right now. And just ask yourself, the moment you start thinking about that trauma, you start feeling the emotions of that trauma. And that trauma could have been 20, 30 years ago. But just like that, on demand, your body can produce the same emotional effect of what it was back then, which means that your body does not really know the time difference, past, present, or future. It doesn't care. And your body is your subconscious mind. So what we do is once we identify that emotion, we'll say, okay, great. Because if you're still feeling it, you're still living in the past.
Yeah.
So our big goal is to negate that. So separate memory from the emotion. And that means we need to create a new emotional reference. And the only way to do it, which is really great, and we can do it right now, is if we fast forward and say, okay, Carissa, if right now your life is in shambles and things are not going way, for example, if there's not a great relationship and you feel like all relationships suck, what do you want out of relationships? And you tell me like X, Y, and Z, this is what I want. And the next question I always ask people, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to live in that emotion? And I had clients on the spot, they're smiling, just talking about, oh my God, it would be so great when I'm full of energy to run with my children, or when I have a client with multiple sclerosis, for her just to walk, how fantastic would that be?
Mm-hmm.
And so then we sit and we feel the emotion. So I like to close my eyes or go for a run or walk. That's how I visualize, much better for me. And then what I do is I live in the future long enough for me to feel a very strong emotion of having achieved my outcome. What happens in the present, because your physical body does not know it, your mind time traveled, it starts to change. So you are deregulating hormones of stress and you're releasing your normal immune response to life. So you're going back to producing the proper levels of estrogen and progesterone and prolactin and testosterone. When that happens, your body goes into this homeostasis when you just feel great. So your body starts healing. But we use this technique for people who have physical ailments, relationship issues, infertility, or even who are struggling financially. you still have to take the action. So it's not like you can
Yep.
just visualize things into your life. It would be nice. I don't know if you ever watched the movies called The Secret. I'm sure you have.
Yeah, yeah.
But the portion that they edited out of that movie, which wasn't follow-ups, was you don't just go and feel it and do, well, not do it, just don't feel it and visualize it. You need to follow up with action. And that's the big piece. But when you have lived in your future and you're coming back so inspired, you are very likely to take action,
Yeah.
as opposed to coming from your traumatic experience where all you want to do is dive under covers and be gone to the world. For me, when I was struggling with my issues, I spent 5 years in depression. Not clinical, I was not suicidal, but let me be honest here. And this is as vulnerable as it gets.
Yeah.
There were moments, Carissa. This one I remember specifically. I lived in Washington State at that time, and I was working as a recruiter for a college. And here I am sitting on the lunch break in my car by a river. And I'm looking, I thought it would be so great to just walk into it and never come out. And a part of me goes, whoa, girlfriend, where's that coming from? This is not us.
Yeah.
And that one goes, I just want to disappear. And then there was a time I was on medication that made me do it. I was walking and there's a bus coming. I was like, it would be nice to just get hit and be over with. And then I was like, oh, so I contacted my doctor. I'm like, off this medication. We're never doing this again.
Yeah.
But if you live in that point, it's just very, very low place. And you can't just in one session wish it away or make it go away. But this continual time travel is one of the things that we do, and trauma release that we do. And of course, changing the diet and other things. But it really allows you to reprogram your body. I remember waking up and it's sunny outside and it's gloomy on the inside. And I go, no, remember when. So let's go to the future. Remember when in the future you're this. I know as humans, we often look at memories of the past. I like to time travel and I remember my future. So when I remember my future, and it's beautiful, in my future, I was holding my baby in my arms. And in my future, I had a wonderful marriage. In my future, I was happy with what I was doing. My body was catching up to it. And then there was one day when I was sitting in a water pool at home and I gave birth to my baby and I had her in my arms and it was like deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
So this is a couple of techniques, and there are more that we can discuss, but these are a couple of very strong ones that I use almost every single day with my clients. And it's amazing because it's not me, but it's you who decides on the outcome. You do all the work. So it reprograms you, where a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they usually are on medication. One of them recently, I just graduated her this week, came, she was taking 70 supplements at the same time. Now imagine an average supplement is about 3 pills. That's like over 200 pills a day.
Yeah, that's insane. It's a lot.
It doesn't sound like it's really addressing the root cause, but in 6 months, we got her to almost 90% improved because we dug into the childhood emotion and releasing the trauma and releasing the stress, creating new beliefs. And she's a totally different person now. We're talking about her coming to work for me because she's also a health coach.
Yeah.
But this is what we're able to do is you decide an outcome, you do the work, you get the glory, and nobody else can ever take that away from you.
I love that. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey. Basically those feelings of like ready to be leaving here. I can relate to it, and I know a lot of other people can as well. I've definitely connected with a lot of people who have attempted and been there. So thank you for sharing that. And it just shows, the power of really, what we can hold on to, but also what we can release and how we can shift our lives to, really empower ourselves and go on the journey of healing. So I just really want to thank you for sharing that because I know you sharing that can touch a lot of people.
I think at some point our journeys no longer belong to us.
Yeah.
I think our pain and our victories do belong to humanity. I'm a very private person. So if you met me 15 years ago, you would have never gotten this out of me.
Yeah.
And I have this, I'm from overseas, so we're all about dignity and all,
Yeah.
And I'm still that way in many ways, but I thought, screw the culture, screw the upbringing. We need to heal the humanity, not just me.
Yes.
Because if we look, most of us are really screwed up. And if you've been healed more than a day, you have pain in your life.
Yeah.
So it's not that even people who come from, maybe you had all the money in the world or you had all the love in the world, but there's some kind of trauma in all of us. And I think to hold on to the pain, as painful as it seems, to let go of it and share it with others is selfish.
I
Now,
agree.
I was not always ready for it. So if somebody is not ready, I would not call them selfish. I'm only saying it when you're ready to share it, then it's
Yes.
only good um, to be other-minded as well.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I mean, one of the messages that I want to get to people is, even though you've gone through a lot of painful experiences and been in those low places and gone through some extremely challenging times, you can shift it into a really like a strength and a powerful thing to be able to support people. And really, I mean, for me, you can let go of what's attached to your story so you can share it to empower people, and it sounds like you've been able to do that in an amazing way, and I appreciate that about you, because it is I feel like it's, as I've gone through my journey, like that was actually a part of my healing process, like sharing it with people, not hiding it, and really letting people know that you can make it through this too. I've seen the dark, and you don't have to live there forever.
Yeah, I call it the dark night of my soul.
Yeah.
And it felt like the night was going on forever and ever and ever. And to speak to what you just shared, Carissa, there is actually science. I mean, again, you're confirming what we already knew, but especially for women, that we heal faster in group settings. So when I work with my clients, they're required to attend group meetings. Not
Yeah.
required. I mean, it's a benefit that they get once a week. And what we have seen is those people who participate in group settings, they actually heal exponentially faster than those who do not. So there is something to, I think psychologically, we're being heard, we're being accepted as we are. That alone releases a lot of stress, takes away the shame and the guilt. And a lot of times, what do we do, especially as women? We hold the shame and the guilt so closely because nobody else is going through this. It's just
Yeah.
us. And when we let go, we realize we're like a part of screwed up humanity that actually shares in it. And the more we let go, the more accepted we feel, the faster we can heal. So
Yeah.
there's absolutely, I wouldn't say that I would share it with anyone, but people who really get you. So it's either your mentor, your coach, your, I don't know, therapist, or brother or sister, but those who do not judge you but accept you as you are, there's absolute healing in doing that together as opposed to alone.
Yeah, I definitely would second that and agree with you, because I've done the work, one-on-one and individually myself, but as I am in groups, the experience definitely can be more powerful. I'm not saying it's always going to be more powerful for, whatever you're going through, it's going to look different for everybody, but um, the energy of coming together, well, one of my things that I am passionate about is letting people know that we are one in this world. We are all connected. And the more we come together and, really allow ourselves to be more connected, we have so much more power in that than we do as individuals, like trying to just make it on our own. So yeah, thank you for sharing that and touching on that, because I do believe in that, and I know from experience that it's powerful to do work together with people, and we can source each other and end up like, I mean, I've actually done work with like teammates, and where it's just like working through some of their stuff, it like works through my stuff, so it's amazing.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you could be even a coaching your client, and then you have this big aha moment that you would have never had unless you were working with somebody. I have a client that I'm working with right now, and she came to me. She has a history of psychiatric things, and she wanted to be admitted, and they would not even take her. She was too young, but had a couple of nervous breakdowns. The digestive system is completely screwed up, and nobody would understand her. Like, it's all in your head. It's all in your
Yeah.
head. So we finally get together, and I validated that it's normal. What you're going through is actually you're going through this.
Yeah.
In 3 months, it was slow progress, about 50% improvement. But then we decided to work together longer, and we happened through discovery, through conversations, we found the exact thing that she needed to get well. And then now she is at 90+% better. But it happened through collaboration,
Yeah.
not through isolation. And I think we need to be very careful when we isolate ourselves. There is a time when you go into meditation, when you do that work alone. Yes, you need that aloneness, but isolation is never good for anyone. And mind you, I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
Like, after I have conversations, at the end of the day, there's nothing but a puddle of hair left on the floor. I wiped out and I need to go and rejuvenate. But even for an introvert, a couple of times a week, I'm like, okay, let's get out, let's go see people. because people need people in order to heal. Because I agree with you 100%. I think we're one. It's not that we're connected. I think we're one. We're just expressed through different physical bodies. But if you strip away the physical bodies, we're just one pure energy.
Yeah, I love that. Um, is there anything on your journey where I would love for you to share, like maybe a moment, like a moment or anything where you've actually felt a big shift in yourself through this work? I love, I've had a lot of people that I've connected with through this kind of go back to moments where they've actually felt a big shift in their life from doing this work. And I was just wondering if there was anything for you that's coming
Oh
up that
yes,
you could share.
you're pulling it out of me prematurely. My husband and I are co-authoring a book which is going to be released in 6 months in June, and so the title of the book is "Son of a Whore." It's his journey from being born into an abusive environment when he was almost killed, and how he survives the process and how he heals through all of it. But a part of it was that his brokenness made me broken as well. I was raised in this beautiful, close-knit family when we would die for each other instead of killing each other.
Yeah.
But when he brought his dysfunction into my life, as much as I loved him, it hurt me a lot. So there was a betrayal on his side, and we made a decision. I stayed knowingly that we can fix it, maybe not, but I was not, there was no physical abuse. So nobody is wondering about it. There was a betrayal on his side. And this is the most vulnerable I ever gotten in front of an audience. But he repented of what he did, and I decided I was going to stay. And this was the dark hour of my soul, and it lasted for many, many years. And I was working through this, and I was working through forgiveness, as many of us have. So if anybody ever hurt you in any way, whether it was psychological, emotional, sexual, whatever kind of trauma, we work on daily basis through forgiveness, right? And we work on forgiveness throughout our lifetimes. But I felt that forgiveness, as I have been taught it at least, fell short on what I needed. Because here's what forgiveness looked like for me. I forgive you and we're having an amazing day. And then boom, I could be right in the middle of making love and boom, it hits me right there.
Yeah.
And memories. And I'm like, oh my God, my body is back to the past.
Yeah.
And I'm in a traumatic experience. And it's like, forgiveness is not giving it to me what I need. So I searched for years to like, where do I take it? Because I'm forgiving, but now I'm still regretting the past experiences, which I no longer do. And I'll take us there.
Yeah.
And I still feel like I need to forgive more. And it's ongoing pain that we have to share. And I finally said, okay, what is it? And I think in that moment, it just finally, you either meet people or you have this divine revelation in yourself. But I had an aha moment a couple of years ago. We were on our anniversary trip. And I don't know. And I don't know what your audience's beliefs are. So you can call it God, the Holy Spirit, the angels. For me, was divine, my divine self, bringing my revelation to me. But I had this aha moment, Carissa, when I realized that somewhere before I was born on this planet, in this very flesh, I think I already was as an energy being. And I think that for whatever reason, and none of us really know why we come to this earth, right? We can come here and we can presuppose and guess and like for joy and experience and whatever else, but none of us really know. So we come here and apparently to learn something and to get somewhere and to do something. So I think that somewhere, somehow this was my big aha moment. I'm working up to it here. But I thought that apparently there was a purpose for me to come as Elena to this planet. And maybe there's work to be done or experience to be had. And it required for me to go through emotional pain and betrayal and through all of it. But whenever we're born, we just have this amnesia and we don't remember. And mind you, there are actually books about kids who remember their past. And just as we grow older, we forget. And I've done extensive research into that, just kind of like, what was there my past life? Was it pre-existence? So, but it's irrelevant. If somebody believes that they just appeared out of evolutionary process, or God created them, to me, it's all the same. I think the energy always was, and especially because I'm a physicist. So I know energy always is. It changes shapes, kind of like water, right? It's ice, water, vapor, but we always are. And I think that somewhere we had a meeting maybe with my husband and many other people that I had emotional experiences with, where I made a specific request. Listen, I need to go to an X, Y, and Z, but in order for me to get there, you need to play your role and either to hurt me or to make me happy or whatever else. And I'm sure before this experience as humans, we say, oh my God, no, this would be horrible. But eventually we agree. And then we forget. And then when I looked back and I finally realized that I was the architect of my own life. And I cannot blame my husband or the friends or whoever else that might have hurt me or my body that betrayed me. What I can do is turn around and just say, thank you because you did your part. And because of you, now I am. Because if the pain did not happen for me, Carissa, I would not be here sitting with you right now, talking to your audience and having worked with thousands of women, having my specific child, living specifically in Austin, Texas, and doing the work that I do. The pain was the catalyst. So my aha moment happened, even though I was already doing this work, but the deeper level was when I finally realized that there's absolutely nothing to forgive. And we're going into depth into this philosophy in the book that will be published here shortly. But when I realized there was nothing to forgive, I sat by the pool. We were at Ritz-Carlton in Florida with my husband. My daughter was playing in the water, and I looked at him and said, thank you. And he said, thank you for what? I said, thank you for the pain. And you would have seen, he looked like he'd seen a ghost because he knew exactly what I meant. And there was no explanation needed. He was dumbfounded, and we had to go through a lot of explanation later. But in the moment, I was just like, I was really, truly, for the first time in my life, super grateful for the joys and a perfect family I was grown up in, and the trauma I went through, and every moment and every pain, and coming to America not knowing a lick of English. So all of those experiences that made me to who I am today. But it was just a pure form of gratitude without any judgment, without, I wish this didn't happen to me, but now here I am, so might as well make it work for me. That was gone. That was just a pure form of gratitude for every single moment. I feel that at that moment, all of those chains of I need to forgive and I need to move on, all of that broke away because from that moment on, I just feel like I got my power back. So before that, I might have had an amnesia and I did not know I orchestrated everything. But once I realized that I might have had a role to play, and again, people can call it angels or God or whatever else, but now I can take full control of the creative power in my life, and every experience going forward was that much more meaningful. So whether it's pain or something else comes in now, I say, oh, thank you. What can I learn from this now? I know this sounds like a whole bunch of hogwash and BS. When I work with my clients and I teach them this principle, I always tell them, listen, if you're not ready yet, just hear me out, but don't go there yet. But when you're ready, you're going to say, okay, yes, I went through trauma, and you went through trauma, Carissa, and we went through your pain, and you went through issues with your emotions and your weight. But looking back, what can we do? We can say, how did it serve me? What can I be grateful for, even in the worst case scenario in that moment? Now, for people who have not experienced traumatic trauma in their life, this would be like impossible to believe. But when you have gone through the dark night of your soul, and you really latch onto it and you get it, just this alone for me, if every single person that hears it latches onto this, I think that alone can heal the body, the spirit, and the mind.
Yeah.
You still walk out the process, but that was my big turning moment where I no longer said, I forgive you, or I forgive myself for staying and making it work, because now I don't respect myself as much. I have quite an ego, apparently. But for me, I was like, no, I'm grateful. So now whether I stay or whether I go, whether I do something or don't, I'm really the one who orchestrated this. This is just playing out by some divine plan. And I'm just catching up to what already had happened outside of this time and space limitation. So that was my big aha moment. And this aha moment really allowed our marriage to heal and go to the next level. And for Dimitri to go through his metamorphosis, and we call it his journey from being a victim to being a villain to being a victor, and got him to a point where he's writing and publishing this book this year, is to really realize now that if there's nothing to forgive, that means there's nothing to be ashamed of. And that means there's no reason to cover up our pain or shame, our imbalances, or anything else. Is, listen, this is what's exactly supposed to be.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so you don't really go through the process of forgiveness anymore. You just kind of like shift out of, I'm not a victim, right? And so do you do any specific processes? Do you incorporate this in your work today? Just because I know for me, my process is to forgive so I can let go still. and
Mhm.
realize I have been playing like a victim role because I still do it. I'm human, and that. But what it totally makes sense what you just shared with me. But what is your process of supporting people and kind of shifting into that?
And thank you for making the point. That was my husband's big thing, and as we're writing this book, we're co-authors on it. That was his big thing. Well, if there's nothing to forgive, doesn't mean everybody has a license to do evil. No, when I'm talking about there's nothing to forgive, it's me as a victim, supposed
Yeah,
victim, right? Now, people who cause pain, they have their hour of reckoning. They still need to make it right with the universe, God, and the people. It's up to them. So by saying there's nothing to forgive, we're not excusing the violence, the
yeah,
abuse, the wrongdoing. Actually, we're doing the opposite, because if there's nothing to forgive, that means I'm now in charge of my life to make it better going forward, not to make it worse.
hmm,
So for me, there's a process, and my husband still goes through that because there was trauma in his life. And for him, it would still be nice to hear I'm sorry from people who abused him.
yeah,
But he is for him, it's an ongoing process of letting go. There are a couple of things that we do. One of them is knowing that it's going to take time. And so when you are not yet ready to jump into there's nothing to forgive, and God knows if there's some big trauma that happened to me right now, it's not like I'm going to bounce back and say, hey, there's nothing to forgive. Hallelujah.
yeah,
We are human, and I will still go through emotions of a human being, the grief and the wrath and the anger. And I'll give myself time to feel all of those emotions. I'll just make a commitment not to live in them permanently.
yeah,
I think that's the difference. And eventually, when I turn around, and yes, I'll still say, okay, what can I learn from this? Then I think we win. So it's not like when I say there's nothing to forgive, it's like, well, hallelujah. If somebody got me, somebody violated me, it's not that. You go through the rage, you go through the pain, you have the conversations, you let people know, but you realize that I'm no longer their victim, because this is the only thing, right, that separates us from that. Oftentimes people who have hurt and abused us, they've forgotten about us, that it happened. What we are doing by constantly having to think that we're their victims and we need to forgive them and we need to forgive ourselves, is we're keeping ourselves inside of the prison they created for us. So my process is to say, okay, I'm nobody's victim. And again, it's not for everybody. This is super, super tough,
yeah,
because we can agree, Carissa, that we were raised in a society that says if you got hurt, you're somebody's victim. So what we are saying is I'm taking the power back, and as I'm learning, I will fall and I'll get up. And yes, in those cases, you need forgiveness. And forgiveness for me, more or less like, okay, my daughter just had an argument with me this morning because she wanted a specific outfit for school, right? And we're going through this, and then we apologize to each other. So we still do that. It's not like, oh, it's meant to be. Those are different things. I'm talking about
yeah,
life altering things.
hmm,
And so the processors are a couple. One of them, I don't know if you have ever heard, and you probably have, a practice called Ho'oponopono. It's a
yeah,
Hawaiian practice. So
yeah,
it's one of the things I love to employ. It's very simple, 4 steps, right? Because Hawaiians like me, and maybe I was their spirit soul sister somewhere back in the day. But I believe that the world around me is my creation, and at least I'm a co-creator of that world.
yeah,
And so what the Hawaiians believe, first of all, is that everything around you, including your pain, is a byproduct of your spirit and your psyche. And secondly, they believe is that you need to make it right with others in order to heal. And so this is the process of Ho'oponopono, is releasing and forgiving. That's what those words really stand for, to make yourself right with others and with self. And it goes in four. It's a quick prayer. It's a mantra, whatever you want to call it. Is please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. So as opposed to saying, I forgive you, now you're saying, please forgive me, and go, heck, what are they forgiving me? But sometimes you're saying, please forgive me to yourself.
yeah,
Please forgive me. I put you in this situation, Carissa or Elena. I should have known better, right? I'm sorry. I will do better next time. I love you and everything that you stand for, because you have not given up on me. And thank you for being there. So for me, this process is really calming, soothing. Emotions come through. Other techniques that you can do, there's an emotional freedom technique. We call it tapping also.
yeah,
You can do just to release in the moment situation. So some of my clients like, oh, heck to the no. Like anger, I'm like, okay, let's go through this process. And essentially, again, I love the quantum time travel, is because it takes me into the future. I create my own future self. And in the future, for most of us, we're better beings than we are today. And
yeah,
then when I emotionally come back to this moment, I start acting like her. And so it really expedites process in my maturation as a person. So I get there fast. And then I have a practice, and you probably do it. And seeing that you use a lot of the spiritual things, I have a gratitude journal, and I keep it by my bed, and I'll take it with me on trips. And I try to at least once a day, or at least once a week if I'm really busy, to sit down and write everything that I'm grateful for in the present, past, and future. And to really just sit in the moment and soak it in, because the moment you start sitting in gratitude, the anger, the victimhood, they fall away.
Yeah.
And so it's a process for me. Let's see, from the moment when we had a big trauma in our marriage in 2006 to the moment when I felt totally free, it was probably about, let's see, 11 years or so, when I had to figure my stuff out to get there. So we do need that. We still need to walk through forgiveness, and we need to still do those things, but not in a sense that we were taught, well, forgive others because you have to. So for example, if you come from a religious background,
Yeah.
well, Jesus commands us to forgive, and you go, yeah, I'm not ready for it yet. Well, we're commanded to. And so now you have additional religious guilt on top of it, because somehow you're not good enough of a child of God to forgive. And I call BS on it, right? Because so I actually went to Bible school at one point, and I can quote the Bible backward and forward, and there's conditions in forgiving. So should we forgive them 70 times 7, Peter says. And Jesus turns around and says, yes, but they need to be repentant first. And if any of your audience wants to, like, oh, what is she talking about, they can email me and I can give them the scriptural references. But I think that everything that we need our time. And what we can do for ourselves is not to allow others or religion to dictate the timing of our healing, the time of our deliverance, not to use it as an excuse to take longer, but really you need your pace. I always tell my clients that I work with that we will move at the speed of your trust, not any slower, not any faster. If you're ready to go into that area, let's go there. If you're not yet, let's work on something else, because you can't force somebody to get to a place where there's nothing to forgive. Like, I'm comfortable there now. I can talk about my pain now. And we were planning on the big reveal of my pain to be in the book, and it was something my husband asked me the permission for. It happens on your show instead. But it is something that you eventually get to a point and say, you know what, I don't even have my rights to my pain anymore. It does belong to others, because if I learn something, and I feel I'm turning 43 tomorrow, and I feel
Happy
that I'm in
birthday.
a, thank you, but I feel that I'm in the best shape emotionally, spiritually, and physically than I was in my 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
But it comes from this continual work on self. And I think that you brought up this point, Carissa, that we're all connected, we're all energy. I think if we go back to that, we can even see villains as broken energy, that their energy needs to be elevated.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can help them get there.
One thing that I share with people, that helps me kind of step out of my victim mentality at times is, like, literally everybody's operating from their own, set of beliefs that have been instilled in them, whatever they've gone through in their life, the trauma and everything, they're operating from that system.
Yeah.
And like, some of them just don't realize, what they're creating in this world. And again, we get to take ownership of, why are they in my life? What can I learn and grow through this person? So there's reasons we're connected to certain people more, people are more present in our lives.
Absolutely. I could not agree with it more. I think that, like, in my mind, I'm like, I think I picked all of the people, even including you now, that were to cross paths. But for us to believe that the people who believe in divine creator can say God placed him in my life.
Yeah.
And those who are indifferent, so we're talking about people who call God the universe, which is fantastic too. The universe provided for you. But I think that everything does happen for whatever reason. And I'm not going to sit here and minimize anything that we're going through.
Yeah.
Not like bring it out more. I'm like, thank you, I've learned my lesson. Can we move on, please? But I do say that if something happened, what role did I play in it?
Mm-hmm.
So we can take ownership and responsibility. And then what lesson have I learned from it? And then how can I heal from it? And the last step is, how can I help others do the same?
Yeah. Well, I love everything that you've shared. It's all so powerful, and it is, it's speaking to my heart, and you're speaking through your heart, and I appreciate it so, so much, because I mean, part of me wants to support people in awakening to all that they are and know that everything is energy and the connection that we truly have, you know, within each other in this world. So, and, you know, so I'm trying to support people in awakening to that. And a lot of what you shared is important for them to hear. So I just want you to know I appreciate you.
Thank you. And it's been an honor to share it. And if we can help at least one more person to take this step toward, I don't want to sound cliche and call it enlightenment, but toward healing.
Yeah.
I think that we've done our job in the last hour.
Well, it has been amazing, and you've shared some amazing things, and I'm so happy that we got to connect and share this with the people that we get to support on their journey. So I would, if there's anything else that you might want to share, or anything that you didn't get a chance to touch on, you could share it now. If not, I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an extreme honor, Carissa. And if there's one thing that I want to share with women is this, especially with women.
Yeah.
Because as women, we are biologically wired to be caregivers and caretakers and make everybody happy, even if we know that we are worth more than that, is to becoming self-full. So our society have drilled into us that if we think about ourselves first, we're selfish. I hate that word.
Yeah.
I think that we have been taken away from the grace that we need in our life. It's becoming self-aware, self-full. Even those who are in religious circles, for example, there is a scripture in the Bible that says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, people go on and love neighbors and sacrifice their life, but they forgot the second part of that. As you love yourself, because unless you love yourself, loving the neighbor is absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
So as women, if there's one thing that I want to appeal to women is start putting your needs first. No joke, before your babies, before your husband, before anybody else, because if you are at 100% capacity, they're going to benefit. If you are lagging and lacking, long and lacking, that's what's going to happen is you're going to pour yourself out until there's nothing left of you. And this is where hormone imbalances start and thyroid conditions and cancers. And yes, there are other factors that play into this. I'm not simplifying it.
Yeah.
But this is when your body's immune system starts to break down. This is where autoimmune conditions jump in. And I see it in women who they don't have self-love and self-appreciation, but they beat themselves down all the time. I'm never surprised that they have an autoimmune condition, because when you attack your psyche, the body attacks itself to basically duplicate what you're doing internally.
Yeah.
So big word of encouragement, find at least a few things. That's my big thing with clients is find something that makes you super, super happy and playful on top of it.
Yeah.
So don't forget to play. So whether it is having amazing sex or taking a bath or going for a run, whatever makes you tingle inside, do more of that. And as you do, then you're going to need only half of the time that you spend now on others to make them as happy and happier than they are now, and keeping yourself in this beautiful place of spiritual, physiological, and emotional health that will allow you to tap into whatever. Everybody's got a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Your purpose, my purpose was birthed out of our pain. Somebody else's purpose might be born out of their joy and something else. So my big takeaway from this would be discover who you are, because I think that's what true spirituality is.
Yeah.
And not calling it selfish or self-conceited. This is really becoming self-full and connected. And the moment I become self-aware of me, I realize that I can now afford to allow others do the same thing for them.
Yeah.
Because if we go, well, I'm going to love on them, but now darn, they have to love me. That's selfishness, but it's really, it's not even that. That would be the wrong term to use. It's really brokenness. But if we're going to go, okay, I met all of my needs. Now I know you deserve your needs, Carissa, to be met. Now out of my fullness, out of my peace, I'm going to serve you to get to the same place. Yeah. So that would be the biggest place. And I think that's where the forgiveness and healing comes from, is realizing what is my true self. One of my very good friends, Tracy Thompson, she wrote a book on this, calls it the internal navigation system. What is my internal navigation system tells me? When I wake up and somebody calls me and says, Carissa or Elena, come to your birthday party. And I was like, but I already planned a night out just by myself with a book and all. The overachiever will be like, forget that. I'm going to go to the party. I'll be miserable. I'll pretend. But my true self says, listen, I so appreciate, Carissa, that you called me and invited me. I had something already planned for today, so I'm going to take a rain check, but next time anything happens, just call me up.
Yeah.
And now they're okay, and you're okay, and then you stay true to yourself. And I think that is a huge part of the healing that most women never tap into, because we go, well, my husband thinks I should be this way. My mother thinks I should be this way. My partner thinks, my coach thinks, my church thinks. Before we know it, there's none of us left in the mix.
Yeah.
So find yourself, ladies.
Yeah.
There's one thing that you can do, find your true self.
I absolutely love that you touched on that, because that is definitely a message that needs to be heard, because that was a part of my journey as well. Realizing that I wasn't really fully loving myself and starting to feel more of what that felt like. Yeah. And understand that I wasn't always, like, I might have thought that I loved myself, but I didn't know until I started.
Yeah, but buying yourself the best clothes and best makeup is not really loving yourself. I mean, it could be a part of it, yeah. But loving yourself, and I work with women when they have hormonal issues, they usually have weight issues. And I tell them, don't wait to love yourself when you're the perfect weight.
Yeah.
Love yourself with all the soft rolls and folds and all of that, because this is the only place you'll ever live in. And if you reject it now, it's going to start rejecting you, and that's the hormone imbalances and health issues. So become a friend with your physical body, yeah, because that is your spiritual body at the same time. So I think that it's really important for us to fall in love with who we are in the moment and not wait for a perfect moment to get there, because for some of us, there will not be a perfect moment. We'll always find an imperfection in who we are.
Yeah. Always can if we look for it. And a lot of times, a lot of people, that's what people are looking and picking out and creating more of, is the negative stuff. So again, I really appreciate you touching on that. I think that was extremely important for people to hear. So thank you.
And I love that you afforded me this opportunity to speak into other people's lives. And to everybody who is listening, I just wish you all a blissful experience with Carissa and what she's got to offer as well, because that's very important to find our spirituality, because without that, we cannot be physically fully present.
Yeah, well, I thank you so much for being here and doing this work and being willing to offer your time and just, like, really just doing the work that you're doing. That's one thing. It's not easy to look inward and shift and support other people, but it's really gratifying to be able to support people. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of our listeners. I hope we hope that you get a ton of value out of this. There is so much value in everything that you have shared, Elena, and yeah, we just want to support you on your journey. So thank you guys all for tuning in, and thank you again.